So you ever been mad at a ref in a game when they make a bad call? You know, you've ever sitting there, you're at your high school game, and the ref makes the worst call you've ever seen in your life. And you just yell, and you scream, and you say you suck, and I think I can say that. Well, we'll find out. And you say all these terrible things about the ref, right? Well, I have a particular situation that I remember from college. And back in the day, I played college soccer, you know, many moons ago. And I was in a game, and there was this kid, and I played defense, and there was this offensive kid who, like, he was both offensive and offensive, if you know what I mean. But he kept, like, kicking me in the shins, do dirty stuff, whatever. Got mad. So towards the end of the game, the kid was on my back, and I was shielding the ball, and he just, like, kept kicking at the back of my legs. And so what I ended up doing is I just got mad, and I grabbed him by the shoulders and threw him over the top of my shoulder onto his back onto the ground, because I just got so mad. So I heard the whistle blow, and so I started walking away. I'm like, well, you know, it's a foul, maybe a yellow card, we'll see. And then I realized the ref isn't coming up to me, so I'm like, all right, this is kind of weird. So I turn around, and the ref carded the guy that's on the ground that I just threw over my shoulder. And so this guy got up and he started screaming and yelling, and honestly, it was very much an unjust call. Like, the foul should have totally been on me. But in that moment, the kid just went berserk, just got super mad, yelling at the ref, whatever. So the game went on, and when the game ended, the kid ended up going up to the ref and apologizing, right? He said, I'm sorry, you know, I shouldn't have lost my cool, whatever. And they made up. And you're like, wow, that was a terrible story, Pastor Matt. Like, I had that huge climax and then they made up. Well, you know, unjust things happen to us all the time. There's people in authority over us that make bad calls, make bad decisions, and make decisions that affect our life that we can't control. And in that moment, our reaction very much is anger. Our reaction very much is frustration. But in the end, how we respond after that person is out of authority of us shows our true character. So as much as he was upset with this person in authority, as soon as he was no longer the ref and he was just a person on the sideline, they shook hands and they made up. And what's interesting is we face many disagreements in our life. We face disagreements with our parents, we face disagreements with our teachers, we face disagreements with our coaches, with our refs, with our pastors, with our bosses. There are many people in our life that have authority that we have disagreements with. But today I want to talk to you about our true character. So your true character shows when that person, how you respond to that person after they no longer have authority over you. And in our story, what's interesting is Saul, if you recall, Saul is at the end of his life, and he actually ends up dying in battle. So David has been, you know, ran into the desert. David has been submitting to Saul. He's been patient. He's, you know, spared Saul's life at least twice. And now Saul dies. And now we have an opportunity to see the true character of the people who used to follow Saul or who knew Saul. And so today I want to talk to you just real quick here about two different approaches that we can have to authority, especially authority that no longer has authority over us anymore. So the first thing is the Philistine approach. Now, 1 Samuel 31, 8 through 10, describes for us how the Philistines treated Saul. Now realize they were enemies, right? They had every reason to be rude, but they also had an approach that was really bad. So let me tell you what the Philistines did when they found Saul dead on the ground after battle. Verse 8, the next day when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news, and they took the body to the house of their idols and to their people. Verse 10, then they put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. See, the Philistine approach was this. They celebrated a leader's collapse. See, we all have different responses to authority. We all have different responses to leaders. But if you're a Philistine, when a leader that you dislike has a moral failure, has a collapse, has bad things happen to them, you celebrate that. Now, if you've looked in the news at all lately, around the world, you see politicians who fall, you see a pastor who falls, you see teachers who get fired for making mistakes, and we celebrate those things. Or we're happy that a teacher gets fired, or someone that we hate gets embarrassed. We find joy from that. Or maybe even someone who has different ideas than you dies, and so you dance on their grave. See, that's the Philistine approach to other people of authority, leaders. And the funny thing about a Philistine is that they celebrate the fall of another leader, but also Philistines use their influence to trash other people's reputation. Now, what's interesting is Philistines rushed the body across their land and raised it up on the wall in the temple to celebrate the fact that this guy had died, that King Saul had died. See, they trash other people. They cut his head off, they took off his armor, and they just completely trashed him in order to raise themselves up. And I know if you exist, which if you're watching this, I'm hoping you do, on social media, you've probably encountered people who take their platform as an opportunity to trash you. Or worse yet, you use your influence on social media to trash other people that you don't even know. You're like, oh, I heard they're a terrible leader. Oh, I disagree with what they believe. Oh, I think that what they said is the worst thing I've ever heard. Oh, they're a terrible person. Oh, I heard they made these mistakes, blah, 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 so they're a bad person. And that is a destructive way to live. And it's not a way that a Christian lives, but ultimately it's the way a Philistine lives. An enemy. Someone with bad intentions. And if you've been trashed on social media before, you know how horrible that feels. You know how painful that is. But when you do that to other people, you're no better than the Philistine who cut off Saul's head and put up his body, his dishonor, up on the wall for everyone to see. It's funny that Facebook is a wall and Philistines put Saul up on a wall. That's interesting. Of course, none of you use Facebook anymore. Instagram, whatever. The third thing that a Philistine does, and ultimately what I want to focus on today is this contrast of a Philistine dishonors their enemy. See, the Philistine approach is to dishonor the people that you disagree with, that you're at war with, that you don't like, ultimately the leader that you don't like, the teacher that you don't like. A Philistine says, oh, I hate that math teacher. They're the worst, and they also have a stutter, and they also can't even do math. They're terrible. That's what a Philistine does. See, what dishonor means is literally to lower somebody else below you. It's the concept of pushing somebody into the dirt. It's to say, to dishonor someone is to make them less valuable than yourself, to make them less human than yourself, to make them less than you. So the concept is to reduce somebody to an animal, or to reduce somebody to something of no value or of not human value anymore. And the dangerous part of that is once someone is not human to you anymore, then your inhibitions to treat them well disappear. Because you're like, well, they are that. I can justify my bad actions. I can justify the things that I'm doing. And see, the Philistine ultimately tears someone else down so that they can feel greater. Like, it's your sole purpose in life is because you feel insecure about yourself, or because you feel like you want to be great, that you have to tear other people down, that you have to humiliate them, if you have to trash them. I would encourage you, don't do that. That's the Philistine approach to life. And simply the question is here that I've asked myself, and I think you should ask yourself is, are you a Philistine? Do you live in such a way that you have to lower other people for you to feel better? That you have to trash other people to show up their sins, to post their mistakes in order for you to gratify yourself and to feel good enough yourself? See, thankfully, there was actually two approaches here in this verse of 1 Samuel. The first was the Philistine approach, but there was another group of people who actually had another approach that I would encourage you is the way I believe a Christian should approach leadership, leaders that they disagree with, enemies that they have. And it's shared here in 1 Samuel 31, 11 through 13, so just continuing on in our story. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, I'm just going to say JG for short. So the inhabitants of JG heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons off the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh, their hometown, and burned them there. Then they took the bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree, which I'm not sure what kind of tree that is, in Jabesh, and fasted for 7 days. Two simple things that I want to wrap up here with in the JG approach. See, the Philistine, they dishonor, they trash, they destroy other people for their own sake. But the JG, first thing they do is they honor their enemies. They honor their leader. They honor the person that was put in authority over them, whether they liked them or not. See, in this verse, it talks about how JG went and rescued Saul and his sons, even though they didn't like him all the time. And then they brought him back and gave him proper respect, proper burial. They treated him how they would want to be treated. Matter of fact, they probably treated him better than they would have wanted to be treated. And although Saul's life was a tragic one, I think in the back of the mind of JG, if you look back earlier in 1 Samuel, Saul actually defended them in a battle and saved their town. So as much as a leader could be at times bad, or you disagree with, or horrible, at some level, every leader protects you in some way, or has helped you in some way. And ultimately, God has put them in authority over you. And so whatever season you find that leader in authority over you, whether it's a soccer game and it's 90 minutes, or whether it's a president, whether it's a teacher, whether it's your parents, there's a season of time where that person is put in authority over you. And our job is to honor that person despite our disagreements. Now, what does honor mean? It's the opposite, obviously, of dishonor. To elevate them, to give them credit, to speak kindly of them. When was the last time your friend on social media posted something that elevated you, that said, hey, this is what I love about this person? I'm not talking about your boyfriend or your girlfriend who's like, oh, I love them, heart, heart, heart. I'm talking about a real friend that said, hey, this is someone that I respect. This is someone that, when's the last time you posted about your teacher and said, hey, this is the best teacher. I appreciate this about them. What about your parents? See, to honor our authority is the JB approach. Why is that a good approach? Because someday you're going to be in authority of other people. And the way that you've treated other people will translate both above to authority and below to those who you have authority over. See, the system of honor is a perpetual one. And the second part is that the JG, no matter what advantages they get from a leader collapsing, they mourn the loss of that leader. They mourn the leader's collapse. So we don't dance on the graves of the people before us. We honor their lives. We respect the things that they've done, the hard work that they put in, no matter what position of authority we talk about. And when they fall, we don't celebrate that, we mourn that. Lately in the news, you may have noticed some different pastors that have had moral failures or have fallen from the heights of being you could call them a celebrity pastor. But that's not just something that's unique to just people you see in the public eye. There's leaders that fall every day. There's people who make mistakes every day. And we have two approaches. The Philistine approach is to say, yeah, screw them, they deserve it. They were the worst person and they got what was coming to them. Or you can mourn for them and say, you know what, another person has fallen, another person has given in to the sins, and reflect on our own life to say, in authority, I need to be careful about the things in the way that I lead and the people that I'm around, to give honor to other people. I don't mock them, I don't defame them, I don't belittle them, but I mourn in deep sadness. Now, referring specifically to the pastors, I mourn that so many had their faith in these people and they were hurt by those people's mistakes. I mourn that the enemy got a foothold in their life. And then I look at myself and I ask to make sure I would never arrive at that place myself. See, JB mourned because Saul was once a great man who through decision after decision of abandonment of God, he was destroyed. See, when a leader collapses, it wasn't just that instance that caused them to collapse. It was a series of decisions that led them where they kept abandoning God, and it led to their ultimate destruction. See, the JB realizes, and they honor other people, they mourn other people because the JB realizes that they are no different than the one who had fallen. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We're all limited. We're all going to rub people wrong. But ultimately, when we're talking about these situations, the Philistine makes things worse, pushes people down, and the JB elevates, raises people up, raises leadership up. And you might be asking the question, well, why should I do that? Well, here's the last verse that I want to read for you as we wrap up in this discussion. Why? Why be like JB? Why not be a Philistine? You see plenty of Philistines in our world prospering. Plenty of people who trash others to their own success, that lie and deceive. So what's the point? I want to read you 2 Samuel 2, 5-7. This is the point. This is why. The Lord will bless you for showing this kindness to Saul your master by burying him. May the Lord now show kindness and faithfulness, and I too will show the same favor because you have done this. Now then be strong and brave, for Saul your master is dead, and the people of Judah have anointed me king over them. See, blessing comes in your life in the JB approach. Favor comes to your life in the JB approach. When you elevate others, everyone ends up being on your team. Everyone ends up wanting your success. There's blessing that comes from God when you honor human life and you just don't trash the people that you don't like. See, the Philistine approach is a downward spiral that will lead you to destruction, but the Jabesh Gilead approach is an upward climb that will lead to a blessed life.